Don't start that dramatic black woman routine in my lobby. Labor or not, you're not getting through. Security guard Derek Malloy thrust his palm out in a rigid stop gesture inside the hospital lobby, his arm cutting the space between the ER doors and Ariel Thompson, hunched to his right and clutching her stomach as another contraction seized her. Every night, someone like you waddles in here screaming emergency, he scoffed. You're not special. You wait like everybody else. If you can't stand, sit on the floor. Ariel's fingers dug into the wall rail as pain tore through her. Derek Malloy had no idea he was denying entry to the one woman whose husband could end his entire career with a single phone call. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Ariel Thompson jolted awake in her darkened bedroom, a sharp pain radiating across her abdomen. The digital clock on her nightstand glowed 11:42 p.m., casting a soft red light against the walls. She sat up slowly, her hand instinctively moving to her swollen belly as another contraction gripped her body. "No, no, no," she whispered, trying to steady her breathing. "It's too early?" She was only 34 weeks along, nowhere near her due date. The pain intensified, forcing her to grip the edge of the mattress. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she reached for her phone with trembling fingers. She pressed Jordan's contact, listening to the rings echo in her ear. "Hi, you've reached Mayor Jordan Thompson. Please leave a message." Ariel ended the call, remembering he was giving an important speech across town at the community center's annual fundraiser. She tried again, but it went straight to voicemail. The silence of the empty house pressed in around her as another contraction hit, stronger than the last. "Okay, baby," she murmured, slowly pushing herself to her feet. "We can't wait for Daddy." She grabbed her pre-packed hospital bag from the closet, moving carefully down the hallway, while keeping one hand against the wall for support. In the kitchen, Ariel snatched her keys from the hook by the door, pausing to breathe through another wave of pain. The contractions were getting closer together, too close for comfort. She knew the drive to Metropolitan Hospital would take 15 minutes in normal traffic, but the late hour might work in her favor. The night air felt cool against her skin as she made her way to her car, each step measured and deliberate. Inside the vehicle, she adjusted the seat back as far as it would go to accommodate her belly, then turned the key in the ignition. The engine's purr seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet neighborhood. Ariel pulled out of her driveway, gripping the steering wheel tightly as she navigated the empty streets. Street lights cast alternating patterns of light and shadow across her dashboard. Another contraction forced her to pull over briefly, her knuckles white as she waited for it to pass. "Just breathe," she coached herself, using the techniques she'd learned in birthing class. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The city seemed eerily deserted, with only the occasional car passing by. Each red light felt like an eternity as Ariel waited, watching the seconds tick by on her car's digital clock. She tried Jordan's phone twice more at stoplights, but still no answer. Finally, the hospital's illuminated sign came into view. Ariel felt a momentary surge of relief as she turned into the parking lot, finding a spot close to the emergency entrance. She gathered her bag and phone, taking a moment to compose herself before stepping out of the car. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, revealing the stark white interior of the hospital lobby. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making everything appear harsh and clinical. The front desk stood about 30 feet ahead, staffed by a nurse who was looking down at some paperwork. Ariel took a few steps forward, another contraction building. She could feel beads of sweat rolling down her back as she tried to maintain her composure. The sound of her footsteps echoed off the polished floor tiles. Before she could reach the desk, movement to her left caught her attention. A security guard stepped out from behind his station, deliberately positioning himself between Ariel and her destination. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a clean-pressed uniform and a badge that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The guard's face hardened as he gave her a dismissive once-over, his eyes lingering on her expensive maternity dress before moving to her face. His expression shifted from suspicious to cold, his jaw setting in a rigid line. He planted his feet firmly, making it clear he had no intention of letting her pass. Ariel felt her heart rate spike as another contraction began building. She opened her mouth to speak, to explain her situation, but the guard's stern expression and confrontational stance made the words die in her throat. The harsh overhead lights cast deep shadows across his face, emphasizing the disdain in his features as he stared down at her. Standing there under the unforgiving hospital lights, with pain radiating through her body and fear clouding her thoughts, Ariel suddenly felt very alone. The guard's cold, dismissive demeanor spoke volumes before he'd even said a word, and she knew with crushing certainty that this was going to be a fight, one she shouldn't have to face while in labor. Security guard Malloy's stance widened as he planted himself more firmly between Ariel and the emergency room entrance. His hand rested casually on his utility belt, but there was nothing casual about his expression. "Ma'am, the main entrance is on the other side of the building," he said, his voice carrying a sharp edge. "This is the emergency department. You can't just walk in here demanding attention." Ariel tried to keep her voice steady, despite the growing pressure in her abdomen. "I need emergency care. I'm in labor, and something's wrong. It's too early." Malloy's eyes narrowed as he gave her another dismissive look. "You look perfectly fine to me. We have actual emergencies here, real patients who need immediate care." He gestured toward the main entrance. "Registration is that way. You'll need to follow proper procedures, like everyone else." A contraction hit suddenly, forcing Ariel to grab the nearest wall for support. Her breath came in short gasps as she tried to ride out the wave of pain. "Please," she managed to say between breaths. "My baby?" "Listen," Malloy cut her off, taking a step closer. "People like you always come in here with attitude, acting like you deserve better treatment than everyone else. But that's not how it works." The words, "people like you," hung in the air, their meaning unmistakable. Ariel felt her cheeks burn with a mixture of shame and anger, even as another contraction began building. She straightened up as much as she could, trying to maintain her dignity. "I'm not asking for special treatment," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm asking for help because I'm in active labor at 34 weeks. Please, just let me through to the ER." Malloy scoffed, shaking his head. "Right, and I suppose you think you can just bypass all our protocols? There are patients in there who've been waiting their turn." He took another step forward, using his height to intimidate. "You need to go to the main entrance and check in properly." Ariel could feel tears welling up in her eyes, but she blinked them back. I can barely walk. The contractions are too close together." "Ma'am," Malloy's voice took on a patronizing tone, "if you were really in that much distress, you wouldn't be able to argue with me right now. I've seen plenty of people try to game the system." Another contraction ripped through her body, stronger than the last. Ariel's knees buckled slightly as she clutched her stomach. "Please," she gasped. "Something's wrong. I need help now." Malloy remained unmoved, watching her struggle with cold detachment. "The rules are the rules. You're disturbing other patients who actually need emergency care." He emphasized the word "actually" with obvious skepticism. "I am having an emergency." Ariel's voice rose slightly with desperation, causing him to step even closer. "Lower your voice," he warned. "This is a hospital, not a marketplace. You can't make a scene here just because you don't want to follow proper procedures." Sweat dripped down Ariel's back as she tried to steady herself against the wall. The fluorescent lights seemed to grow brighter, making her dizzy. Through the glass doors behind him, she could see nurses moving about, help so close yet completely out of reach. "I'm begging you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My baby could be in danger. Please, just let me see a doctor." Malloy crossed his arms over his chest, his badge catching the harsh overhead light. "And I'm telling you to go to the main entrance. If you really need medical attention, you can get it there, after you check in properly. The pain was becoming unbearable now. Ariel could feel her legs starting to shake as another contraction built. She tried to take a step forward, hoping to somehow make it past him to the emergency room doors, but he immediately shifted to block her path completely. "Don't even think about it," he warned, his voice hard. "I'm not letting you barge in there and disturb the real emergencies." Ariel's vision began to blur as the contraction peaked. Her legs finally gave way, and she doubled over, one hand still braced against the wall while the other clutched her stomach. Through the haze of pain, she could see Malloy's polished shoes still planted firmly in front of her, his arms folded across his chest in a stance of absolute authority. He made no move to help her, as she struggled to remain standing, his shadow falling across her like a physical barrier between her and the medical care she desperately needed. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the lobby as Ariel pressed her palm against the cold wall, desperate for support. Her whole body tensed as another contraction seized her, more intense than any before. The pain radiated from her lower back through her abdomen, stealing her breath. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she tried to breathe through it. The wall's smooth surface was the only thing keeping her upright as her legs trembled beneath her. Malloy continued to watch her with obvious disdain, his arms still folded across his chest. Suddenly, warmth rushed down her legs. Ariel looked down in horror as clear fluid splashed onto the polished tile floor, spreading in a growing puddle around her feet. Her water had broken. "My water!" she gasped, panic rising in her throat. "Please, my water just broke. I need help now." Malloy glanced at the puddle with disgust. "Great. Now you're making a mess." He stepped back to avoid the liquid, his boots squeaking against the floor. "That doesn't change anything. Everyone tries these tricks." Ariel's fingers scraped against the wall as another contraction ripped through her. The pressure was becoming unbearable. She could feel her baby moving, dropping lower. With trembling steps, she tried to edge toward the ER doors, desperate to reach help. "Don't even think about it," Malloy snapped, quickly moving to block her path again. A smirk crossed his face as he watched her struggle. "Yeah, everyone claims an emergency when they want to cut ahead. You're not bypassing protocol." "I'm begging you," Ariel pleaded, her voice breaking. "My baby's coming too early. Something's wrong. I can feel it." Tears mixed with sweat on her cheeks as she struggled to form words through the pain. Malloy's hand moved to his radio, his expression hardening. "Ma'am, step back now. You're causing a disturbance." "Please," she whispered, her legs shaking violently beneath her. I can't stand much longer." "This is your final warning," he said, unclipping his radio. "You've been refusing instructions since you arrived. I won't let you disrupt this facility." The room seemed to tilt around Ariel as another contraction crashed over her. Her vision blurred at the edges as pain consumed her entire body. She could feel her baby moving lower, an overwhelming pressure that made her gasp. "Help me," she managed to choke out. "Something's wrong. Please." Malloy raised the radio to his mouth, his voice cutting through the lobby's quiet hum. "This is Officer Malloy at the ER entrance. I need backup for an uncooperative subject refusing to follow procedures." Ariel's fingers slid against the wall as her legs began to give way. The tile floor rushed up to meet her as she started to collapse to her knees. Through the roaring in her ears, she could hear Malloy continuing his radio call, describing her as combative and creating a scene. The fluorescent lights above seemed to pulse brighter, then dimmer as spots danced in her vision. Her body shook uncontrollably now, terror gripping her heart as she thought of her baby. She was alone, in premature labor, and the one person who could help her access medical care was instead treating her like a criminal. "Copy that," crackled a voice through the radio. "Sending additional security to your location." Malloy's boots stepped closer, the leather creaking as he moved. "Now you've done it. You should have just followed the rules like everyone else. Ariel's palms pressed against the cold tile as another contraction seized her. The puddle from her broken water had spread, soaking into her clothes as she knelt there. She could barely hold herself up, her arms trembling with the effort. The pressure was becoming overwhelming now. Her baby was coming, ready or not, and she was kneeling on a hospital lobby floor with no medical help in sight. Tears dripped onto the tile as she fought against the rising panic. Through the glass doors, she could see medical staff moving about, completely unaware of her situation. Help was just feet away, separated by locked doors and an unmovable guard who had decided she didn't deserve emergency care. "Stay right there," Malloy commanded, as if she could move even if she wanted to. "Backup will be here soon to escort you to the proper entrance." Through tear-blurred vision, Ariel saw a flash of blue scrubs moving quickly across the lobby. A young nurse with auburn hair pulled into a tight bun had emerged from a side hallway, her eyes widening as she took in the scene before her. "Oh my God!" The nurse broke into a run, her rubber-soled shoes squeaking against the tile. "What are you doing? She's clearly in active labor." Malloy straightened his shoulders, maintaining his authoritative stance. "Ma'am, this woman needs to follow proper admission procedures." "Are you kidding me right now?" The nurse's voice rose sharply as she knelt beside Ariel, quickly assessing her condition. "Her water's broken, she's having regular contractions, and you're blocking her from emergency care?" Ariel's body shook with another contraction as the nurse gently supported her shoulders. The pain was becoming impossible to bear, each wave stronger than the last. She could feel the nurse's steady hands checking her pulse, professional calm masking obvious anger. "She was refusing to follow protocol," Malloy insisted, his voice defensive. "Creating a disruption. The only disruption here is you preventing a laboring mother from receiving emergency medical care." The nurse shot back, her face flushed with anger. She reached for the intercom panel on the wall, jabbing the button with her finger. "This is Nurse Sarah Mitchell. I need an attending physician to the ER entrance immediately. We have a woman in active labor being denied entry." Malloy's face darkened. "You can't just—" "I absolutely can, and I am." Nurse Mitchell cut him off, her voice sharp enough to make him step back. "Move aside now, or I'll have you reported for endangering both mother and child." She turned back to Ariel, her tone softening. "Just breathe, honey. Help is coming. How far apart are your contractions?" Maybe 2 minutes, Ariel managed between gasping breaths. "Getting stronger. Okay, stay with me." The nurse squeezed her hand reassuringly. "I'm going to get you a wheelchair. Don't move." She strode purposefully toward a row of wheelchairs lined against the wall, shooting Malloy a withering glare as she passed. He shifted uncomfortably, finally taking a few steps back from his blocking position. The sound of running footsteps echoed through the lobby as 2 more nurses and a doctor in a white coat hurried toward them. The doctor took one look at Ariel and immediately began barking orders. "Get her into triage now! Why wasn't she admitted immediately?" His stern gaze fell on Malloy, who seemed to shrink under the scrutiny. Nurse Mitchell returned with the wheelchair, and together with the other nurses, they carefully helped Ariel to her feet. Her legs barely supported her weight as they guided her into the chair. Malloy watched silently from the side, his earlier bravado completely deflated. "I've got you," Nurse Mitchell murmured, squeezing Ariel's shoulder as she settled into the wheelchair. "You're safe now." For the first time since entering the hospital, Ariel felt tears of relief rather than fear sliding down her cheeks. The crushing weight of helplessness began to lift as the medical team surrounded her with professional efficiency. The doctor held the ER doors open as they wheeled her through, leaving Malloy and his protocols behind in the lobby. The harsh fluorescent lighting gave way to softer illumination as they moved swiftly down the corridor. "BP's elevated," one of the nurses called out, already taking Ariel's vitals as they moved. "Pulse is rapid." "No surprise there," Nurse Mitchell replied grimly, still pushing the wheelchair. "How long were you in labor before coming in?" she asked Ariel gently. "Started A few hours ago, Ariel managed between controlled breaths. Getting worse, fast. They turned down another hallway, passing through a set of double doors marked labor and delivery. The familiar hospital sense of disinfectant and sterile equipment filled the air. Here we go, Nurse Mitchell announced as they entered a triage room. Let's get you onto the bed. With practiced care, the medical team helped Ariel from the wheelchair. Her legs trembled as they supported her weight, guiding her to sit on the edge of the hospital bed. Another contraction gripped her, just as they were helping her lie back. Breathe through it, Nurse Mitchell coached, holding her hand firmly. You're doing great. The other nurses moved with quick efficiency around her, one attaching monitor leads while another prepared an IV line. The doctor stood at the foot of the bed, making notes on a tablet as he observed. Getting a fetal heartbeat, announced one nurse, adjusting the monitor. The rapid whoosh whoosh sound filled the room, bringing fresh tears to Ariel's eyes. Relief flooded through her as she lay back against the pillows, finally receiving the medical care she'd desperately needed. The immediate terror of being denied help began to fade, replaced by the normal fears of impending delivery. Nurse Mitchell stayed by her side, her presence steady and reassuring as the team continued their assessments. The horror of the lobby confrontation still lingered, but for now, Ariel could focus on what mattered most, safely delivering her baby. The steady beep of monitors filled the triage room as Ariel lay back against the thin hospital pillows, her body still trembling from the earlier ordeal. The immediate crisis had passed, but exhaustion weighed heavily on her limbs. Harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting sharp shadows across the medical equipment surrounding her bed. Through the thin curtain barrier, movement and hushed voices caught her attention. Ariel recognized Malloy's deep voice, now taking on an official tone that made her stomach clench with anxiety. She became immediately hostile when I attempted to direct her to proper admissions, he was saying, refused to follow basic protocols, and began causing a disturbance in the lobby. Ariel's hands gripped the scratchy hospital blanket. Every word he spoke twisted the truth of what had happened, painting a completely different picture than the terrifying reality she had endured. Subject was yelling, making threats, and attempted to force her way through security measures. He continued, I maintained professional composure, while she displayed increasingly aggressive behavior. A rush of dizziness washed over her as she listened to the lies. The monitor beside her bed registered her quickening pulse with more frequent beeps. How could he stand there and completely fabricate events that had happened less than an hour ago? Had to call for backup due to her confrontational attitude, Malloy added. She was deliberately ignoring instructions and creating a scene that disturbed other patients. Other voices joined in, speaking in low tones that barely carried through the curtain. Ariel strained to hear, her heart pounding harder with each snippet that reached her ears. Always the same with them. One voice muttered, coming in here acting entitled. Another voice agreed. Some black women just think they deserve special treatment, probably trying to jump the line ahead of real emergencies. A third voice added. Tears burned in Ariel's eyes as the weight of their words pressed down on her chest. The prejudice in their casual conversation was like a physical blow. She had nearly collapsed in that lobby, her water broken, in desperate need of medical care, and now they were painting her as an angry, entitled woman making unreasonable demands. The monitor's beeping increased again as panic started to set in. These weren't just cruel words. This false narrative could have serious consequences. How would it affect her ongoing care? What if there were complications? Would staff take her concerns seriously, or would they view everything through the lens of this fabricated report? More importantly, what would happen to other women who came after her? If Malloy's lies were accepted as truth, they would only reinforce the prejudices that had nearly cost her and her baby's safety tonight. The voices moved further down the hall, but their impact remained, heavy and suffocating in the small triage room. Ariel's hands shook as she reached for her phone on the bedside table. She needed Jordan. needed his strength, his advocacy, his unwavering support. A young nurse entered, different from Nurse Mitchell, who had helped her earlier. This one barely made eye contact as she moved to check the IV line, her movements efficient but cool. Ariel wondered if she had been part of the group outside, if she too now saw her as just another entitled patient causing problems. The nurse adjusted the drip rate with quick, practiced movements. "Try to rest," she said flatly, still not meeting Ariel's eyes. "Doctor will be in to check you soon." Ariel nodded silently, not trusting her voice. As the nurse left, closing the curtain behind her with a metallic scraping sound, Ariel's trembling fingers found Jordan's number in her phone. The screen blurred through her tears as she pressed dial. Each ring seemed to echo Malloy's lies, the staff's whispers, the weight of prejudice that had nearly prevented her from reaching help. She needed to tell Jordan everything, not just about the guard's actions, but about how he was now trying to cover it up, how the staff were already accepting his version of events without question. The IV needle shifted uncomfortably in her arm as she held the phone, waiting for Jordan to answer. Outside her curtained room, footsteps passed by. More staff members who might have heard Malloy's story, who might already have formed their opinions about her based on his lies. The phone continued to ring as Ariel silently prayed for her husband to pick up. She needed him here, needed someone to witness what was happening, to help her fight back against this false narrative before it became accepted as truth. Her other hand protectively cradled her belly, feeling another contraction building. Her baby would be born into this world of prejudice and assumptions, where even a mother in desperate need could be painted as aggressive and entitled simply because of her race. The ringtone suddenly cut off as Jordan's voice came through the speaker. Ariel's hand shook harder as she prepared to tell him everything. The triage room door burst open as Jordan Thompson rushed in, still wearing his formal speech attire, his tie loose and askew. His eyes widened at the sight of Ariel connected to monitors, her face drawn with exhaustion and tear-streaked. "Baby, what happened?" He crossed the room in 2 quick strides, taking her hand. "I got your message and came as fast as I could." Ariel's composure cracked as she gripped his hand. "Jordan, they wouldn't let me in. The guard blocked me from getting help. I was having contractions. My water broke right there in the lobby, and he just stood there." Jordan's expression darkened as Ariel recounted everything. Malloy's dismissive treatment, his accusations, and now the false report he was spreading through the hospital. His jaw clenched tighter with each detail. "And now they're out there talking about me like I'm some angry black woman who was trying to cause trouble." Ariel's voice broke. "They're believing his lies without even questioning them. This ends now." Jordan pulled out his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. Within minutes, the hospital administrator on call and the night supervisor appeared in the doorway, their faces masks of professional concern. Mayor Thompson, the administrator, Dr. Phillips, stepped forward. "We understand there was some confusion during Mrs. Thompson's admission process." "Confusion?" Jordan's voice was controlled, but carried an edge that made both administrators straighten. "My wife was in active labor, clearly in distress, and your security staff denied her emergency medical care. That's not confusion. That's negligence." The supervisor, a thin woman named Ms. Walsh, cleared her throat. "According to the security report, Mrs. Thompson was confrontational and refused to follow standard admission protocols." "That's a lie," Ariel interjected, her heart rate monitor beeping faster. "I was begging for help. I could barely stand." "Mrs. Thompson, please try to stay calm," Dr. Phillips said smoothly. "We understand you were under stress, but our security staff are trained professionals who follow strict protocols." "I don't care about your protocols," Jordan cut in. "I care about the fact that my wife could have given birth in your lobby because your guard decided to profile her instead of help her." Ms. Walsh's expression tightened. "Mayor Thompson, that's a very serious accusation. Our staff would never—" "Never what?" Jordan stepped closer to them. "Never discriminate? Never abuse their authority? Never file false reports to cover up their actions? The administrators exchanged glances. Dr. Phillips spread his hands in a placating gesture. Mayor Thompson, I assure you we take all patient concerns seriously. We'll conduct a thorough review of the incident. You're damn right you will, Jordan said, because I'm filing a formal complaint, and I want to see every second of security footage from that lobby. Ms. Walsh's professional smile slipped slightly. Mr. Mayor, perhaps we could discuss this at a more appropriate time, when emotions aren't running quite so high. The appropriate time was when my wife needed emergency medical care, Jordan replied. Instead, your staff left her suffering, while they made assumptions based on how she looks. Dr. Phillips cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mayor Thompson, we all want what's best for Mrs. Thompson and your baby. Escalating this situation unnecessarily could have unfortunate consequences. Are you threatening me? Jordan's voice was dangerously quiet. Ms. Walsh stepped closer, lowering her voice. Sir, you have a promising political career ahead of you. Getting involved in a controversial discrimination claim could damage your future prospects. I'm sure we can find a way to address your concerns more discreetly. The implication hung heavy in the air. They were offering to sweep it under the rug, to protect both the hospital's reputation and Jordan's political standing, at the cost of burying the truth about what had happened to Ariel. Jordan's expression hardened. My wife and child were put at risk because of your staff's prejudice. If you think I care more about political prospects than their safety, you don't know me at all. A contraction gripped Ariel, and she gasped, squeezing Jordan's hand. The monitor's beeping increased sharply. A nurse hurried in, checking the readings. We need to move her to delivery, the nurse announced, already preparing to unlock the bed's wheels. Dr. Phillips nodded quickly, seemingly relieved for the interruption. We'll continue this discussion later, Mayor Thompson. Right now, let's focus on your wife's immediate care. As the administrators retreated and medical staff began preparing for the move, Jordan leaned close to Ariel, squeezing her hand. His touch conveyed everything words couldn't. His love, his support, his determination to fight for her. The bed's wheels squeaked as nurses began to move it toward the delivery room. Ariel held tight to Jordan's hand, drawing strength from his presence even as another contraction built. They had both heard the unspoken threat in the administrator's words, the clear intention to suppress the truth about what had happened. The delivery room's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows as nurses wheeled Ariel's bed into position. The room smelled of antiseptic and rubber gloves, sterile and cold, despite the warmth of the medical equipment humming around them. Jordan hadn't let go of her hand since the confrontation with the administrators, his presence a shield against the sideways glances from hospital staff. Between contractions, Ariel gripped Jordan's hand tighter. They're going to try to hide what happened, she whispered, her voice tight with both pain and determination. We can't let them. We won't, Jordan promised, wiping sweat from her forehead with a cool cloth. But right now, focus on bringing our baby into the world. That's all that matters. Another contraction seized her, stronger than before. Ariel's back arched as she breathed through the pain, using the techniques she'd learned in birthing class. The nurses moved efficiently around them, but their usual cheerful chatter was noticeably absent. Instead, they worked in tense silence, their expressions carefully neutral. You're doing great, Jordan murmured, ignoring the staff's cool demeanor. Just like we practiced. Breathe through it. Hours passed in a blur of pain and determination. The delivery room clock ticked steadily toward dawn as Ariel labored. Through it all, she felt the weight of Malloy's lies hanging over them. Every time a new nurse came in, every time they checked her charts, she saw the hesitation in their eyes, the prejudice that had already taken root from his false report. I see the head, the doctor announced finally, positioned at the foot of the bed. One more big push, Mrs. Thompson. Ariel gathered her remaining strength, squeezing Jordan's hand so hard she might have broken bones. With a final, tremendous effort, she pushed. The room filled with the strong, healthy cry of their newborn son. "He's perfect," the doctor said, lifting the baby for them to see. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Relief and joy flooded through Ariel as they placed her son on her chest. His tiny face was scrunched and red, his cries fierce and determined. She touched his cheek with trembling fingers, marveling at his perfect features. "He's beautiful," Jordan whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "just like his mama." The medical team worked quickly to clean and examine the baby, their professional masks slipping slightly in the face of new life. But even this moment of joy couldn't completely erase the undercurrent of tension. Ariel noticed how the nurses documented everything with extra detail, how they seemed to be watching her reactions more closely than usual. "I need to step out for a minute," Jordan said once they were settled, kissing Ariel's forehead. "I want to start the complaint process before they have time to get their story straight." Ariel nodded, cradling their son closer. "Be careful. They're already trying to cover it up." Jordan's footsteps faded down the hall as Ariel focused on her newborn. The early morning sunlight was just beginning to peek through the window, casting a warm glow across the room. Her son's tiny hand wrapped around her finger, his grip surprisingly strong. Through the partially open door, she could hear snippets of conversation from the nurses' station. Words like liability and protocol drifted in, along with hushed mentions of the mayor's wife and potential media attention. A young nurse entered with a clipboard, her movements stiff and formal. "We need to document everything for the birth certificate," she said, not quite meeting Ariel's eyes. "And there are some additional forms regarding the admission incident." "You mean when your security guard denied me emergency care?" Ariel asked quietly, her son still nestled against her chest. The nurse's discomfort was visible. "I'm just here to collect the necessary paperwork, Mrs. Thompson." Through the window, Ariel could see Jordan in the parking lot below, pacing as he spoke on his phone. Even from this distance, his tension was evident in every movement. She knew he was already fighting for her, for their son, for the truth. The warmth of the morning sun filled more of the room, but Ariel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the hospital's air conditioning. Her son squirmed in her arms, reminding her of everything that could have gone wrong. How differently this morning might have ended if that nurse hadn't intervened in the lobby. She held her baby closer, breathing in his new life scent, trying to focus on the miracle in her arms rather than the battle ahead. But the joy of motherhood was shadowed by the knowledge that somewhere in this hospital, people were already working to discredit her story, to protect themselves at the expense of truth and justice. The sun's rays touched her son's face, highlighting his perfect features. He was here, he was healthy, and he was safe. But the relief of his safe arrival couldn't completely overcome the uncertainty that hung in the air like the antiseptic smell, sharp, clinical, and unavoidable. The late morning sun streamed through the hospital room window as Ariel sat propped against a stack of pillows. Jordan perched on the edge of her bed, frowning at the tablet in his hands. The complaint form's blue light reflected off his glasses as he carefully typed their account of last night's events. "We need to be precise," Jordan said, his mayor's voice replaced by the protective tone he reserved for family. "Every detail matters." He paused, looking up at Ariel. "Are you sure you're up for this right now? You should be resting." "I need to do this while everything's fresh," Ariel replied, adjusting her hospital gown. Their son slept peacefully in the clear bassinet beside her bed. "If we wait, they'll say my memory isn't reliable." Jordan nodded, returning to the form. "Time of arrival?" "About 11:45 p.m. Ariel closed her eyes, remembering the harsh lobby lights, Malloy's cold stare. "I remember checking the dashboard clock right before I parked." As they worked through the complaint, a young nurse, the same one who had helped Ariel in the lobby, poked her head in. Her name tag read Sarah. She glanced nervously down the hallway before stepping inside. "Mrs. Thompson?" Sarah wrung her hands. I saw what happened last night. The guard had no right to treat you that way. I want to make a statement. Nurse Jenkins! A sharp voice cut through the air. The hospital's chief administrator stood in the doorway, her perfectly pressed suit a stark contrast to Sarah's rumpled scrubs. A word, please. Now. Sarah's face paled. She shot Ariel an apologetic look before following the administrator out. Through the partially open door, they could hear the administrator's clipped tones. Meeting. My office. Immediately. They're already circling the wagons, Jordan muttered, his jaw tight. He typed faster, documenting Sarah's attempted statement and the administrator's intervention. Minutes ticked by. Hospital staff moved past their door, some peering in with poorly concealed curiosity. Others whispered to each other, quickly looking away when Ariel met their eyes. Malloy's false report had clearly made the rounds, painting her as an angry, entitled troublemaker. A different nurse entered to check Ariel's vitals, her movements brusque and impersonal. She barely spoke, recording numbers with mechanical efficiency before hurrying out. The message was clear. Ariel was now a liability, someone to be handled with distant professionalism rather than care. I'm calling Marcus, Jordan said suddenly, pulling out his phone. He's the best private investigator in the city. We need to get ahead of this before they destroy evidence. Ariel watched him pace by the window as he spoke in low, urgent tones. Their son stirred, making small, snuffling sounds. She reached for him, grateful for his warm weight in her arms. Sarah never returned to their room. When they glimpsed her later at the nurse's station, she kept her head down, her earlier willingness to speak replaced by tense silence. The sight made Ariel's stomach clench. Throughout the afternoon, the pressure grew more obvious. A hospital risk management officer stopped by, all artificial smiles and carefully chosen words, suggesting that misunderstandings could be resolved internally. Security cameras in the lobby were suddenly under maintenance. Even the cleaning staff seemed to have been briefed. They worked quickly and silently, avoiding eye contact. They're trying to isolate us, Ariel observed as another staff member hurried past their door. Make us feel crazy for questioning their version of events. Jordan squeezed her hand. Let them try. Marcus is already pulling security footage from nearby businesses. If they think they can bury this, a soft knock interrupted him. An older nurse entered with paperwork, her face pinched with disapproval. Your discharge instructions, she said curtly, dropping the papers on the bedside table. And a reminder about the hospital's media relations policy. We didn't say anything about media, Ariel pointed out. The nurse's expression tightened further. Just making sure everyone understands proper procedures. Unlike last night. Jordan stood, his patience visibly wearing thin. Are you suggesting my wife was wrong to seek emergency care while in labor? I'm not suggesting anything, Mr. Mayor. The nurse's tone could have frozen water. I'm simply doing my job, unlike some people who think rules don't apply to them. She left before Jordan could respond. I need to call Marcus again, Jordan said, running a hand through his hair. The faster we get independent documentation, the better. Their son began to fuss, rooting against Ariel's chest. She adjusted her gown to feed him, finding comfort in this simple act of nurturing amid the growing tension. The natural process felt like a quiet rebellion against the sterile hostility surrounding them. Go, she told Jordan. I've got this. She looked down at their nursing son, drawing strength from his perfect innocence. Whatever battle lay ahead, she would face it to ensure no other mother endured what she had. Jordan paused at the door. We'll get to the truth, he promised, no matter what it takes. The morning sun cast long shadows across the hospital parking lot as Jordan helped Ariel into their car. Their newborn son slept peacefully in his car seat, tiny fingers curled into fists. The discharge process had been tense and rushed, with staff clearly eager to see them leave. Home, Ariel sighed with relief as Jordan carefully navigated through morning traffic. She noticed him checking his phone at stoplights, his forehead creasing deeper each time. What is it? She asked. The story's already spreading. Jordan's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Social media, local news sites, community forums. Everyone has an opinion. By the time they arrived home, Ariel's phone was buzzing constantly with notifications. She settled into their living room couch, cradling their son while Jordan brought up the local news website on their TV. Mayor's wife claims discrimination at city hospital. The headline blazed. The comment section below churned with reactions, always playing the race card. Hospitals have protocols for a reason. She probably walked in demanding VIP treatment because her husband's the mayor. If she was really in that much pain, she would have called an ambulance. Ariel's hands shook as she scrolled through her phone. Facebook groups were lighting up with debates. Twitter threads dissected every aspect of her story. Some people questioned why she drove herself. Others suggested she was exaggerating for attention. "Listen to this one," Jordan said, his voice tight with anger. "Maybe if she hadn't acted so entitled, security wouldn't have had to step in. These people always want special treatment." He threw his phone onto the couch. "These people, they don't even know you." But amid the vitriol, other voices emerged. A woman named Patricia shared her story of being ignored in the same hospital's emergency room while having a heart attack. Another patient, Marcus Williams, described similar treatment from the same security guard 3 months ago. "Jordan, look." Ariel pointed to a growing Facebook thread. "It's not just me. This has been happening for years." Their son stirred, and Ariel adjusted him against her shoulder. More stories poured in. Delayed treatment, dismissive staff, security guards profiling patients. The hospital's perfect facade was cracking as people finally spoke up. By midday, local news vans parked along their street. Jordan fielded calls from reporters, while Ariel tried to rest. But peace was hard to find as her phone kept lighting up with notifications. Playing the victim while getting VIP treatment. Pathetic. Must be nice having the mayor pull strings for you. Bet she's loving all this attention. Don't read them, Jordan advised, but Ariel couldn't look away. The truth of her experience was being twisted, rewritten by strangers who weren't there. Early afternoon brought a call from Marcus, their investigator. Jordan put him on speaker. "The security footage is interesting," Marcus said. "Or rather, what's missing is interesting. There are gaps in the lobby feed, exactly during your arrival time. The hospital claims it's routine maintenance, but my contact in IT says otherwise. They're covering their tracks," Jordan concluded. "Not just that," Marcus continued. "Security guard Malloy's written report was backdated. He didn't file it until after you announced your complaint. And get this, 3 other incident reports involving him have vanished from the system in the last 24 hours. Ariel closed her eyes, remembering Malloy's smirk as she collapsed. "They're erasing everything." More calls came in as the afternoon wore on. Community leaders wanted statements. Hospital board members sent carefully worded messages about reviewing protocols. City council members hinted at possible investigations. Their son woke hungry, and Ariel retreated to the nursery for quiet. The pale blue walls and soft light created a peaceful bubble, but even here, she couldn't escape reality. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, the nurse who had tried to help. "I'm so sorry. They made me sign a non-disclosure agreement, but I know what I saw." Jordan appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened, looking exhausted. The hospital's PR team just released a statement defending their security protocols. They're framing it as a simple misunderstanding of standard procedures. "Standard procedures," Ariel's voice cracked. "I could have lost our baby." Their son finished nursing, his eyes heavy with sleep. Ariel rose carefully and placed him in his crib, her heart aching at his innocent expression. All she'd wanted was to safely deliver her child. Instead, she'd stumbled into a fight that was growing bigger by the hour. Jordan's phone rang again. His face darkened as he listened. "I'll be right there," he said tersely, ending the call. He turned to Ariel, worry etched across his features. "We need to talk." Evening shadows stretched across their living room as Ariel and Jordan sat on the couch, surrounded by Marcus's preliminary investigation notes. Their newborn slept peacefully in his bassinet nearby while they pored over the documents. "Look at this pattern," Jordan said, pointing to a timeline Marcus had constructed. 6 similar complaints about the same guard in the past year, all mysteriously resolved with no formal record. Ariel rubbed her tired eyes. And all from minority patients. The coffee table was covered with witness statements, hospital policies, and security logs. Marcus had been thorough, building a clear picture of systematic discrimination. "The city council hearing is at 10 tomorrow, Jordan said, checking his phone. "Marcus says we should be ready for pushback. The hospital's bringing their legal team." Ariel touched her throat, anxiety building. "I just need to tell the truth. They can't deny what happened." "They'll try." Jordan's jaw tightened. The hospital administrator called again, offering to resolve this quietly. Said it would be better for everyone. "Better for them, you mean?" Ariel lifted their son from his bassinet as he began to stir. "How many others have they silenced?" They spent hours preparing her testimony, carefully documenting every detail of that night. Jordan insisted she try to sleep, but Ariel lay awake, rehearsing her statement. The truth seemed so clear, so undeniable. How could anyone twist it? Morning arrived too quickly. Ariel's mother came to watch the baby while they headed downtown. The city council chambers were already packed when they arrived. Hospital administrators sat in a tight cluster, their lawyers whispering among themselves. "Remember," Jordan squeezed her hand, "just speak your truth." The council chairman called the session to order. Ariel's heart pounded as he explained the purpose of the hearing: to address allegations of discriminatory practices at City General Hospital. Before Ariel could be called to testify, the hospital's lead attorney stood. "If I may, council members, we'd like to present some relevant evidence first." The chairman nodded, and the attorney gestured to an assistant who dimmed the lights. A projection screen lowered from the ceiling. "This security footage shows the actual events of the night in question," the attorney announced smoothly. Ariel's stomach dropped as grainy video filled the screen. The timestamp showed her arrival at the hospital, but something was wrong. The footage jumped and skipped, showing only fragments of the confrontation. In these carefully selected clips, Ariel appeared to be gesturing wildly, her face contorted in what could be interpreted as anger rather than pain. The audio was even worse. Her pleas for help were cut out, leaving only moments that, taken out of context, made her sound demanding and aggressive. Malloy's dismissive comments and blocking actions were nowhere to be seen. Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber. Ariel felt the stares, the judgments, the assumptions. Her cheeks burned as she watched this twisted version of events paint her as exactly what Malloy had accused her of being: entitled, aggressive, unreasonable. "As you can see," the attorney continued, "hospital security followed standard protocols while dealing with a difficult situation. Any claims of discrimination are clearly unfounded." Jordan's hand found hers, squeezing tight. She could feel him trembling with anger beside her. The chairman turned to Ariel. "Mrs. Thompson, would you like to respond to this evidence?" She stood on shaking legs, but before she could speak, the hospital's attorney interrupted. "We have additional footage, if the council requires it." More edited clips played, each one carefully crafted to support their false narrative. Ariel watched helplessly as her experience was erased and rewritten before her eyes. The truth of her pain, her fear, her desperate need for help, all replaced by this manufactured version of events. Council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some wouldn't meet her eyes. Others wore expressions of skepticism that cut deep into her heart. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded small in the large chamber. "That's not what happened. They've edited the footage. They've removed—" "Are you suggesting the hospital falsified evidence?" the attorney interrupted, his tone dripping with condescension. "I'm saying it's not complete. It doesn't show—" "The timestamp is continuous, Mrs. Thompson. Are you perhaps misremembering due to the stress of your condition?" Ariel felt the room spinning. Every word she spoke seemed to sink her deeper. The attorney had an answer for everything, twisting her responses until she hardly recognized her own experience. The hearing dragged on, becoming an exercise in humiliation. Hospital staff testified about their professional protocols and commitment to equal treatment. Each statement pushed the truth further away, burying it under layers of bureaucratic justification. Jordan maintained a stoic expression, but Ariel could feel his mounting fury. When his phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, he checked it discreetly. "Don't react. Got a tip about unedited footage. Full surveillance archive exists. Call me ASAP." The chairman called for a brief recess. As people filed out of the chamber, Jordan helped Ariel to her feet. Her legs felt weak, her spirit crushed by the weight of institutional power aligned against her. "I should have known they'd do this," she whispered, fighting back tears. They had hours of footage to work with. They could make it show whatever they wanted. Jordan's arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders as they walked toward the exit. "This isn't over," he promised, his voice low and determined. "We're not letting their lies win. Not this time." The parking garage was nearly empty when Jordan pulled in just after midnight. He killed the engine but left the keys in the ignition, scanning the shadows between concrete pillars. Marcus's text had been specific. Level 3, Section D, midnight sharp. A figure emerged from behind a support column. Young, probably mid-20s, wearing hospital scrubs under a heavy jacket. The IT staffer Marcus had mentioned. She glanced nervously over her shoulder as she approached Jordan's car. "Mayor Thompson?" Her voice shook slightly. "I'm Sarah from IT." Jordan stepped out, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "Thank you for meeting me. We don't have much time." Sarah pulled a small external hard drive from her jacket pocket. "I copied everything from the past week, the original footage, before they edited it. They don't know I have access to the backup servers." Her hands trembled as she passed him the drive. "They're planning to wipe the backups tomorrow morning. Standard system maintenance. Once that's done, their edited version becomes the only version." Jordan carefully tucked the drive into his inner coat pocket. "Why are you helping us?" Sarah's eyes darted around the garage again. "Because I saw what really happened. I was monitoring the cameras that night. And," she swallowed hard, "my sister went through something similar last year. Same guard. Nobody believed her either. We'll protect your identity," Jordan assured her. "Marcus knows how to handle this. Just be careful." Sarah backed away, already moving toward the stairwell. "They've got people everywhere. IT, security, administration, they all work together to make problems disappear." Jordan watched until she was safely gone before driving home, taking a winding route to ensure he wasn't followed. His heart pounded the entire way, the drive feeling like it was burning through his pocket. Ariel was waiting up when he arrived, their son finally asleep after a long evening of fussing. "Did you get it?" Jordan pulled out the drive, holding it like it might shatter. Everything from that night, unedited. They moved to his home office, closing the door quietly. Jordan connected the drive to his laptop, while Ariel perched on the edge of his desk chair, tension visible in every line of her body. The first video file opened to show the hospital lobby from multiple angles. The timestamp matched the moment Ariel had arrived, but this time the footage played smoothly, without suspicious jumps or cuts. They watched in silence as the scene unfolded in its raw entirety. Ariel entering, clearly in distress. Malloy's immediate hostile posture, his deliberate move to block her path. Every dismissive gesture and cruel comment came through with perfect clarity. "Turn up the audio," Ariel whispered. Malloy's voice filled the room. "People like you always think you deserve special treatment." His sneering tone was unmistakable. The footage continued relentlessly. Ariel doubled over with contractions while he stood watching, her water breaking on the floor, her desperate attempts to explain between waves of pain, Malloy's radio call deliberately misrepresenting the situation. Jordan's hands clenched into fists as they watched. The truth was there in high definition, not just discrimination, but calculated cruelty, every moment revealing the guard's deliberate choice to deny care to a woman in labor. "Look at this angle!" Ariel pointed to one feed. "You can see him smirking while I'm begging for help." They watched through to the end. The nurse's intervention, Malloy's immediate shift to defensive lies, the gathering of administrators to begin the cover-up. 4 camera angles captured every moment from multiple perspectives, leaving no room for doubt or denial. "This is everything we need," Jordan said, already copying the files. "The press conference is at 2 tomorrow. This will blow their whole story apart." Ariel touched the screen, where her past self struggled to remain standing. All those people at the hearing, who looked at me like I was lying, they need to see this. They spent the next hour preparing multiple backup copies of the footage, organizing the most damning clips into a clear timeline. Jordan called Marcus to begin coordinating with the media team. "We should get some sleep," Jordan said finally, checking the time. "Tomorrow's going to be intense." He carefully placed the original drive in his desk drawer, engaging the lock with a solid click. For the first time since the hearing, Ariel's shoulders relaxed slightly. "We have proof," she said softly, as if afraid to believe it. "They can't bury this anymore." Jordan pulled her close, feeling her exhaustion in the way she leaned against him. "No more lies. No more twisting the truth. Tomorrow, everyone sees exactly what happened." The night felt different now, the weight of helplessness lifting just enough to let hope seep in. In the nursery next door, their son made quiet sleeping sounds. The proof was secure, the truth preserved in unedited pixels, waiting for morning's light to expose what should never have been hidden. The afternoon sun streamed through the living room windows, casting warm light across the papers spread across Jordan's desk. He adjusted his tie, reviewing his prepared statement one last time, while Ariel gently rocked their newborn son nearby. The press conference would start in less than 2 hours. "I'll present the unedited footage first," Jordan said, reaching for his desk drawer. "Then your statement, followed by questions. The truth will be impossible to deny once people see what really happened." The key turned smoothly in the lock, but when Jordan pulled the drawer open, his heart stopped. The drive wasn't there. "No," he muttered, rifling through the drawer's contents. "No, no, no!" Ariel looked up sharply. "What's wrong?" "The drive." Jordan yanked the drawer completely out, dumping its contents onto the desk. "It's gone." "That's impossible." Ariel stood carefully, cradling their sleeping son. "You locked it in there last night. We both saw you." Jordan was already calling Marcus, their investigator. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. He tried again immediately. "Someone had to have broken in," Jordan said, pacing now. "The lock shows no signs of damage, but they must have." His phone buzzed with an incoming text from Marcus. "Can't reach Sarah. She's not at work. No one's seen her since last night." Ariel sank into the nearest chair, her face draining of color. "They got to her." "We don't know that," Jordan said, but his voice lacked conviction. He dialed Marcus again. The baby stirred, making small, distressed sounds that mirrored the growing tension in the room. Ariel rocked him gently, trying to keep her own rising panic from disturbing him further. Jordan's phone chimed with a news alert. His hands shook slightly as he opened it. "Official statement from Metropolitan Hospital Board of Directors," he read aloud, his voice growing tighter with each word. "Regarding false allegations made by Mayor Thompson." Ariel closed her eyes. "What are they saying?" "They're claiming—" Jordan had to stop, his jaw clenching. "They're saying I attempted to coerce hospital staff into fabricating evidence, that I'm manufacturing a racial controversy for political gain. They're calling it a hoax?" Ariel's voice cracked. "They say they have proof I offered bribes to IT staff to create doctored footage." Jordan's phone was buzzing constantly now with messages from his staff, reporters, city council members. They're painting this as a calculated attempt to damage the hospital's reputation. Ariel clutched their son closer. "But we saw the real footage." We know what happened. Without that drive, Jordan trailed off, running his hands through his hair in frustration. His phone rang. The hospital's chief administrator. Jordan let it go to voicemail, already knowing it would be a thinly veiled threat wrapped in professional courtesy. The baby began to cry in earnest now, picking up on his mother's distress. Ariel tried to soothe him, but her own hands were shaking too badly. "They're going to bury this," she whispered, "just like they buried all those other cases, all those other women who tried to speak up." Jordan knelt beside her chair, wrapping an arm around both her and their son. "We're not letting them win, but they already are." Tears spilled down Ariel's cheeks. "They have all the power, all the influence. They can make whatever story they want stick, and people will believe them because they're the ones in authority. Who's going to believe us now?" The baby's cries grew louder, echoing through the suddenly too quiet house. Outside, they could hear cars pulling up, probably reporters responding to the hospital's statement. "I can't," Ariel's voice broke completely. "I can't let them turn me into a liar, turn this into some kind of scheme. That night was real. What that guard did to me was real. Our son could have died because of their prejudice, and now they're going to pretend none of it happened?" Jordan held them tighter as Ariel began to sob, her whole body shaking with the force of her grief and rage. Their son wailed between them, tiny fists waving in distress. "I promise you," Jordan said fiercely, his own eyes wet with tears of fury. "This isn't over. I don't care what it costs me politically. I don't care what they try to do to my reputation. We're going to find a way to expose the truth." But Ariel could barely hear him through her sobs, all the fear and trauma of that horrible night crashing back over her. Malloy's sneering face, the pain, the terror for her baby's life, and now they were trying to erase it all, to paint her as a liar, and her husband as a manipulator. Jordan gathered his wife and son closer, trying to shelter them both as camera flashes began lighting up their front windows. "We're not stopping," he whispered. "No matter what it takes, we're not stopping until justice is served." The evening shadows lengthened across the living room as Ariel sat motionless on the couch. The house was finally quiet, their son sleeping peacefully in his nursery after hours of fussing. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. Jordan paced nearby, still making calls, still trying to salvage something from this disaster. But with each passing hour, their hopes seemed to dim further. The hospital's accusations dominated every local news channel, their carefully crafted narrative spreading like poison through the community. Ariel closed her eyes, replaying that terrible night in her mind. Malloy's cold eyes, the pain, the fear. But suddenly, another face emerged from her memories. The young nurse who had finally helped her, who had shouted at Malloy and rushed her to safety. "Jordan," she said suddenly, sitting up straighter. "The nurse, the one who found me in the lobby." He paused mid-stride. "What about her?" "She saw everything. She's not under the hospital's direct control like the other witnesses." Ariel's voice grew stronger. "And she was furious with the guard. I remember how she yelled at him." Jordan set down his phone. "Do you know her name?" "Sarah Mitchell." The name came back clearly now. "She wrote it on the whiteboard in my room. She was so kind during the delivery. But then," Ariel frowned, "I didn't see her again after management pulled her aside for that meeting." Within minutes, Jordan's investigator had an address. They debated waiting until morning, but decided they couldn't risk the hospital getting to her first. After arranging for Jordan's mother to watch the baby, they drove through the darkening streets to a modest apartment complex on the city's east side. Sarah Mitchell lived on the 3rd floor. When she opened her door to their knock, her eyes widened in recognition. She glanced nervously down the hallway before quickly ushering them inside. "I've been hoping you'd come," she said, wringing her hands. "But I was afraid to reach out. They've been watching everyone so closely since that night." Her small apartment was neat, but sparsely furnished. She gestured for them to sit on a worn sofa while she perched anxiously on a kitchen chair. "They threatened your job," didn't they? Jordan asked gently. Sarah nodded, twisting her fingers together. More than that, they said they'd make sure I never worked in healthcare again, that they'd claim I was negligent with patients. She swallowed hard. I have student loans, my mom's medical bills to help pay. I couldn't. We understand, Ariel said softly. You did everything you could that night. You saved us. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. But I should have done more. The things they're saying about you now, it's all lies. I was there. I saw how that guard treated you, how he blocked you from getting help, even when— She stopped, taking a shaky breath. Would you be willing to make a statement? Jordan asked. Tell what you witnessed? Sarah stood suddenly, moving to retrieve her phone from her purse. I can do better than that. Her hands trembled slightly as she unlocked the screen. I recorded it. Ariel and Jordan exchanged startled looks. The second I saw how that guard was acting, I knew something was wrong, Sarah explained, scrolling through her files. I've seen them cover up incidents before, seen them twist things around to protect themselves, so I pulled out my phone and started recording as soon as I came around the corner. She found the video and pressed play. The footage was slightly shaky but clear, shot from an angle that showed the entire confrontation. There was Ariel, obviously in distress, gripping the wall for support. Malloy's aggressive stance as he blocked her path, the moment her water broke. His callous smirk as she begged for help. The audio captured every cruel word, every dismissive comment. I kept recording even after we got you to triage, Sarah said quietly. It caught the guard making his false report, the other staff's comments. Everything. Ariel's hand found Jordan's, squeezing tightly as they watched. The evidence was undeniable, irrefutable. Everything they needed to expose the truth. Why didn't you come forward with this sooner? Jordan asked, though his tone held no accusation. I was scared, Sarah admitted. And then when they called me into that meeting, they made it clear what would happen to anyone who spoke against the hospital. But I kept the videos safe. I knew someone would need it eventually. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. You can use it, all of it. I'll testify, too, if you need me to. I can't let them keep doing this to people. Tears slid down Ariel's cheeks as relief and gratitude washed over her. All their hope hadn't been lost, after all. Here was the truth, preserved by someone brave enough to stand up against injustice. Jordan reached out to shake Sarah's hand, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you. You don't know what this means. Ariel wiped her eyes, feeling the weight of helplessness finally beginning to lift. The hospital's carefully constructed lies wouldn't stand against this raw, unedited reality. The truth would finally be heard. The morning sun streamed through City Hall's tall windows, casting long shadows across the packed chamber. Every seat was filled, with people standing shoulder to shoulder along the walls. The air felt electric with tension as council members filed in, their faces grave. Ariel sat in the front row, her newborn son nestled against her chest in a soft blue blanket. Jordan squeezed her hand as the council president called the emergency session to order. In the row behind them, Sarah Mitchell twisted her hands nervously in her lap, her phone containing the crucial footage safely tucked in her pocket. Ms. Thompson, the council president announced, you have the floor. Ariel rose slowly, cradling her son. The room fell silent as she made her way to the podium, each step deliberate and dignified. Her baby stirred but stayed quiet, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. Thank you for convening this session, she began, her voice clear and steady. I stand before you not just as a victim of discrimination, but as a mother who nearly lost everything due to prejudice and callous indifference. She described that terrible night, her words painting a vivid picture of fear and desperation. I arrived at the hospital in active labor, terrified for my baby's life. But instead of receiving care, I was blocked, dismissed, and treated with contempt. The hospital administrators shifted uncomfortably in their seats as she continued. The security guard didn't see a woman in medical distress. He saw only my skin color and made assumptions that nearly cost 2 lives. Her son made a small sound, and she adjusted him gently. This precious child could have died, because one man decided I didn't deserve emergency care, because he believed the worst about me based solely on my appearance. The room remained silent, hanging on her every word. But this isn't just about one guard or one incident. It's about a system that allows such prejudice to flourish, about hospital administrators who chose to cover up discrimination rather than address it, about a culture that finds it easier to silence victims than confront uncomfortable truths. She turned slightly, gesturing to Sarah. Fortunately, there are still people of conscience who refuse to be silenced. Ms. Mitchell, would you please join me? Sarah walked to the podium, her steps unsteady, but her expression determined. She held up her phone. I recorded everything that happened that night. The hospital has been lying to you. See for yourself. The video began playing on the large screen behind them. The chamber filled with gasps as people watched the raw footage. Malloy's sneering face, larger than life, his cruel words clearly audible. Ariel's obvious distress as she begged for help. Angry murmurs grew as the video continued, showing Malloy's false report and the staff's prejudiced whispers. Someone shouted, "Shame!" from the back of the room. Others joined in, their voices rising in outrage. The hospital's lawyer jumped to his feet. This video hasn't been authenticated. It could be doctored. I witnessed everything on that recording, Sarah interrupted firmly. I'll testify under oath, and I'm not the only one who saw the truth that night. More voices joined the chorus of anger. A woman near the front stood up. The same guard turned away my elderly mother last year. Others began sharing similar stories, years of buried grievances finally surfacing. The hospital administrators huddled with their lawyers, their faces pale. The council president banged his gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order as the crowd's fury grew. We have endured this discrimination for too long, someone shouted. We demand action. Accountability, another voice called out. Others took up the cry until it became a chant that filled the chamber. Accountability! Accountability! Ariel stood straight and tall at the podium, her baby still peaceful in her arms as the chant grew louder. The truth she had fought so hard to expose was finally breaking free, impossible to contain or deny any longer. The council president conferred quickly with his colleagues before rising. In light of this disturbing evidence, we need time to discuss appropriate actions. This council will deliberate immediately. As the officials filed out, the chanting continued, growing stronger. Accountability! Accountability! The hospital administrators tried to slip away, but found their path blocked by angry citizens demanding answers. Phones recorded their hasty retreat as the chanting followed them down the hallway. Ariel remained at the podium, Jordan now standing beside her with a protective arm around her shoulders. Their son slept on, unaware that his mother's courage had finally forced a city to confront its uncomfortable truths. The chamber pulsed with energy as people continued to voice their demands for justice, their calls echoing through the historic halls of City Hall. Sarah stepped closer to Ariel, tears streaming down her face as the crowd continued their relentless chant. Accountability! 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 The afternoon sun cast long shadows through City Hall's windows as council members filed back into the packed chamber. 3 hours had passed since they'd withdrawn to deliberate, hours filled with tense waiting and hushed conversations among the crowd that refused to leave. Ariel sat in the front row, her son sleeping peacefully in her arms. Jordan held her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. The room fell silent as the council president approached the podium, his expression stern but determined. After reviewing the evidence and consulting with legal counsel, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed chamber, this council has reached several immediate decisions. He lifted a document, adjusting his glasses. First, we are ordering the immediate termination of Security Officer Derek Malloy for gross negligence and willful denial of emergency medical care. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd, but the council president wasn't finished. Furthermore, the police department has been instructed to arrest Mr. Malloy on charges of reckless endangerment and criminal negligence. The murmur grew louder as two police officers stepped forward from the back of the room. The former security guard, who had been sitting stiffly in the corner with hospital administrators, stood up shakily as the officers approached. "You can't do this," he protested, as they reached for their handcuffs. "I was following protocol." "Protocol never includes denying emergency care to a woman in labor," one officer responded firmly, securing the cuffs around his wrists. The crowd watched in satisfaction as he was led away, his face flushed with anger and humiliation. The council president continued, "Hospital Administrator James Whitney is hereby removed from his position, effective immediately, on grounds of obstruction of justice and falsifying official records." Whitney jumped to his feet. "This is outrageous! You have no authority." "We have every authority," the council president cut him off. "And the district attorney will be reviewing evidence of criminal conspiracy charges against you and other members of senior management who participated in the cover-up." As security escorted the protesting administrator out, the council president turned to a new page. Additionally, in light of systematic failures of oversight and accountability, the current hospital board is being dissolved under municipal emergency powers. The remaining hospital officials slumped in their seats as he detailed the interim management structure being put in place. A team of independent healthcare administrators would take control immediately, with a mandate to implement comprehensive reforms. Weeks passed swiftly after that dramatic day. Ariel watched from home as news coverage tracked the ripple effects of her stand for justice. The hospital's toxic culture began to crumble as more staff came forward with their own stories of witness discrimination. Malloy and Whitney faced multiple criminal charges, as investigators uncovered a pattern of similar incidents they had buried. On a bright morning 1 month later, Ariel stood beside Jordan in the City Hall ceremony room, their son cooing softly in her arms. The chamber was packed again, but this time with supporters and community members gathered to witness a historic moment. Jordan stepped to the podium, holding up a thick document. "Today, I'm honored to sign the Ariel Thompson Emergency Care Reform Act into law," he announced. "This comprehensive legislation ensures that no one will ever again be denied emergency medical care due to prejudice or discrimination." The room burst into applause as he detailed the law's provisions: mandatory civil rights training for all hospital staff, clear protocols protecting patient access to emergency care, independent oversight committees, and severe penalties for violations. "But most importantly," Jordan continued, his voice thick with emotion, "this law establishes the right of every person to be treated with dignity and respect when seeking medical care. The days of dismissing patients based on appearance or assumptions are over." He signed the document with a flourish, and the room erupted in a standing ovation. Ariel felt tears in her eyes as she stood to join him at the podium, their son reaching out to grab the microphone. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice carrying over the gradually quieting crowd. "Thank you for hearing my voice. Thank you for demanding change. And thank you for helping ensure that no other mother will ever have to fear being turned away in her moment of greatest need." The applause was deafening as she finished speaking. Person after person stood to show their support until the entire room was on their feet. Ariel held her son close, knowing that his future would be brighter because she had refused to let injustice win. Later that afternoon, Ariel approached those same hospital doors that had once been barred to her. But this time, instead of a hostile guard, she was greeted by a new security team member who smiled warmly and held the door. "Welcome to Memorial Hospital, Mrs. Thompson," she said respectfully. The lobby was transformed, not just physically with new signs clearly stating patient rights, but in its very atmosphere. Staff moved with purpose, but also kindness, treating each arrival with equal concern and care. Ariel paused for a moment, her son resting peacefully in his carrier. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past brush against the promise of a better future. Then she stepped through the doors that were finally, truly open to everyone. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.